Every state's pension crisis ranked. Excuse me. This is interesting. My man Jimmy sent this to me, and I want to dive into this. I get a lot of people. I just talked to a lady 2 days ago who had a pension from California, and she's like, I don't know if they're going to be able to be here. She's worried about it. I get that. So let's dive into this. I haven't read it, and I'm interested to see what the who is this MSN Money. All right, so let's see what we got. We got a guy who is obviously very, very upset, very, very worried because we're talking pension crises ranked, and this guy just, oof, man, he's like, how can I make this happen? Well, hopefully the house behind you, brother, is paid off. All right, so let's go. Many government employees' pensions are at risk. As members of the baby boomer generation age in retirement, more and more are relying on pension benefits for their main source of income. Millions of teachers, firefighters, you name it, just municipality workers, depend on the income owed to them through defined benefit pension plans. Such plans require employees to contribute a portion of their salaries to a pool of funds that is invested on their behalf and paid out to them in retirement. Poor management of the funds at state and local levels, however, has put those benefits at risk for many future retirees. According to the NGO, non-governmental organization, get rid of NGOs, don't let them have tax deductions. That's all charities, to include churches. And as a practicing Christian, I'm very comfortable saying all charitable entities should lose their tax exempt status. Just let everybody be treated equal Stephen, or even Stephen, because the Pew Charitable Trust and all these entities are very, very political, even though they purportedly are not. According to the NGOs, Pew Charitable Trust, state pension systems currently have, on average, less than 70% of the assets they need to be able to pay out the benefits owed to current or retired public employees. In some states or cities, Chicago, the gap is significantly smaller, while others, the pension fund gap is far worse. To rank the severity of the pensions crisis, 24/7 Wall Street reviewed the average pension funding ratio, the market value of pension fund as a percentage of the total benefits owed to current and future employees for all 50 states with data from the Pew Charitable Trust. All right, cool. So let's see what we got here. We got click ahead. Well, I hate when they don't just put in one. Well, how the hell do you click ahead? Oh, right there. I wish they just put it in one thing. I know they do it to get the ads, but it just drives me crazy. So Wisconsin is the most, wow. All right, Scott Walker, man. Well, Scott Walker, he won 2 terms and got booted, or in 3 terms and got booted, but he changed that state big time. Funded ratio, 102%. So total pension shortfall, they got $2.6 billion surplus. All right. Government workers as share of total workers is 13.7, which is the 9th lowest. That's good. An average annual payout per employee. Public employee, $26,000. All right, and they're going to attribute to Tom Evers. He's just won last year, so nope. It's Walker. South Dakota funded ratio is 100%. They got $9.1 million surplus. Government shares as total workforce, 18% of the employees of total workforce are government workers. I wonder if that's just state or is that state and federal too. Average payout per public employee, $21,000 roughly. So, and Kristi Noem is the Republican governor there. Okay. We got Tennessee. All right, man, right on. Bill Lee, spaceman. He used to pitch for the Red Sox. You know what I'm talking about? It's not the same guy. Funded ratio, 96.5%. Pension shortfall is $1.7 billion, which is the 5th smallest. 14.2% of private workforce or total workforce is government employees with an average annual payout of $17,000, which is the 3rd lowest. Yeah, okay. New York, Cuomo. All right. Total pension shortfall, $11.5 billion though. So even though their funded ratio 94%, they got $11 billion that they're short. 15% of the total workforce is government employees, and the average annual payout per public retiree is $33,000. If that's the average, that just tells you not that many public retirees are making that much money. Because don't forget, the average is everybody, and divide by the amount of the number of retirees. Yeah, that's not very much, man. I'm actually surprised that's so low in New York. That tells me there's a bunch of people getting the high end, school administrators and stuff, but the actual teacher Yeah, that's interesting. But I don't know. That could be from the pensions from previous generations that you're looking at. I don't know how to factor that. I bet that would be similar to the average Social Security. You're gonna have some, Mrs. Smith who retired in 1982 from PS 112 public school in New York City, and she was getting $15,000 as a pension. In 1982, that's a lot, but now it's not much. I don't know how that works. That's interesting, though. All right, Idaho, 91.3%, 1.5 billion is their shortfall, and 16.9% is the average shares government workers of total workforce. All right, North Carolina, 90% funded. 16% of the government workers as part of total workforce, and the average payout is about $20,000. I'm not going to use those averages anymore because I don't know how to extrapolate that. That could be similar to the average Social Security payment. If it is, it's just as meaningless. Utah, look at that. Wow, that's pretty. 90% funded ratio. Total pension shortfall is $3.54 billion. It was 16% of the government workers as percentage of the total employment base there in Utah. Nebraska, all right, good. 17% of the government workers of the total workforce, 90% funded ratio. Washington State, right on. There's Mount Rainier. About 10 billion shortfall, roughly 90% funded ratio. That's pretty good. Average payout about $20,000 with the government workers about 17%. Oregon, 83% shortfall. So now we're starting to go. Went from 90%, 89.6 in Washington to 83%. And Oregon's the 41st least at risk. 15% is a government workforce as per share of the total working population. Delaware, right on. All right, so 82.8%, only 2 billion shortfall. 14.4% government workers as share of total workforce. All right, there you go. Delaware's, I tell you, man. John Carney. Don't know if it was that Jim Carrey. I guess Carney, right? Iowa, 82% shortfall, 6.7 billion, 16.5% government workers. All right, let's keep going. Maine, the great state of Maine. Is that Portland Headlight? I can't remember. 3 billion shortfall, 16% of government workers as a share of total workforce, and funded ratio right at 82%. Ohio, 80%. Mike DeWine as a governor, pension shortfall, 39 billion, ninth largest, and 14% of the government workers as share of total workforce. And that's 39 billion, man, and that's number 37. Florida, 79%, 40 billion, but it's a big state. 12.5% of the government workers as share of total workforce. Okay, let's keep going. Georgia, here we go. Hey, I got to go down there later today, as a matter of fact. 79% funded ratio. 22 billion is a shortfall. 15.3% of government workers as share of total workforce. My man Brian Kemp is a governor. West Virginia. All right, everyone talks about West Virginia. 3.9 billion shortfall. 78.9% funded. 21% government workers as share of total workforce. Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. Let's keep going. I guess that's Missouri. Yep, 78% funded. Shortfall 15.8 billion. Government workers as share of total workforce is 15%. Oklahoma, 78% funded. 8.5 billion shortfall. 20.6% government workers as share of total workforce. Virginia, 77%, 21 billion. Whew. Shortfall, 18.1% government workers. What's this? Arkansas, 76.9, $8 billion shortfall, 16.8% government workers. Texas, 76% funded, $55 billion in shortfall, 15.6% government workers. I have no idea what that is. Wyoming, that's awful gorgeous there, 75.9% funded, 2.7 billion shortfall. Government workers are 24%. Wow. What's that? Nevada, 74% shortfall, 13 billion, and 11.6% government workers. That's it. That's the lowest. That's nuts. So Nevada has the least amount of government workers. Montana, we got 72.8% funded ratio, 4.1 billion shortfall, 18.9% government workers. Alabama, 71% funded with a pension shortfall of $15 billion. Wow. 18.9% government workers as part of the total workforce. California, 68% funded, $190 billion short. I mean, $190 billion short. I mean, it's a big state because the average annual payout per employee is $36,000. I told you, I'll never forget talking to a lady. She was a retired teacher. I think it was like a $98,000 pension. It's crazy. 15.1% of total workers are government. Maryland, 68% funded, pension shortfall $22 billion, 18.4% government workers. Kansas, 67% funded, 9.1% billion shortfall, and 18.2% government workers. Alaska, 66.6% funded, 7.2 billion total shortfall, 24.6%. So a quarter of all workers in Alaska work for the government. All right. Louisiana, 18.2 billion pension shortfall with a funded ratio of only 65%, and 16.5% of employees work for the government. Michigan, 65%, 32 billion shortfall, 13.7% work for the government. Indiana, 65%, 17 billion total shortfall, 13.7% work for the government as well there. Wow, that's pretty. Vermont, there you go. 64%, 2.3 billion shortfall, 17.9% work for the government. Oh man, that's nice. North Dakota, okay, looking 63% shortfall. Funded ratio, 3 billion shortfall, and 19% work for the government. How many people in Vermont? 17.9% work for the government. What's that? Minnesota, 63% shortfall, 37 billion. 63% funded ratio, 37 billion shortfall, and 14.4% work for the government. All right, so we're getting down to the New Hampshire. 62% funded, shortfall is 5 billion, and 13.2% work for the government. What's that? New Mexico, 62% funded, 16.5% shortfall, and 22% work for the government. That doesn't surprise me. Los Alamos and all that. It's got to be Arizona. Yep, Arizona. Camelback Mountain. Should go up there. It's freaking gorgeous. 62% funded. Wow. 27 billion shortfall and 14.5% work for the government. Ooh, look at that. Mississippi. Gulf Shores, right? Oh, that's whatever. I don't know. 61% funded. $16 billion underfunded. Man, and 21% work for the government in Mississippi. Massachusetts, all right, here's the top 10 most risky pensions. 59.9% funded ratio, 37 billion shortfall, and a 12.5% work for the government. Pennsylvania, 55% funded ratio, 66 billion shortfall, 11.7% work for the government. Wow. So we got what we have: Massachusetts, Pennsylvania. What's this? Hawaii, 4.8% funded, 13 billion shortfall, 19% work for the government. What is that? It's got to be was that a crater or something like that? That's nuts. Look at that. Did that get hit by a comet? That's crazy. South Carolina, man, 54% funded, 25 billion shortfall, 17.1% of people work for the government. Let's see here. Pause that real quick. This is Rhode Island, 53% funded, 5.5 billion shortfall. Only 12% of the workers work for the government. I'm surprised by that. What's that? Colorado, oh man, 47% funded. Jeez Louise, $54 billion short. 16.3% work for the government. But look at that average payout, $34,000. I don't even know what that is. Connecticut, 45%, 34 billion shortfall, 14% work for the government. And what's this going to be our bottom three here? Illinois, 38% funded, 137 billion shortfall, and 13.5% work for the government. New Jersey, 35% funded, 142 billion, and 14.5% work for the government. Man, That's crazy. And lastly, Kentucky. Yeah, Matt Bevin, man. I think he's elected, going for an election next Thursday or next Tuesday. Sure is pretty though. 33.9% funded, $43 billion shortfall, 16.2% work for the government. I mean, see, here's the thing that's going to, if all right, if you got a pension of say $2,500 a month, I don't think you have any concern. I would be concerned if you have a pension. I'll never forget when I worked in New Jersey. All right, I was working in Philly, but I had these folks in New Jersey, and they hated Governor Christie with a passion. And he was a retired school administrator. I won't even say like a big up in a county school district or something like that. And she was a retired teacher. And they were making like $200,000 a year in their pensions. And Christie said, if you're making over a certain threshold, you're not getting cost of living adjustments anymore. And they were pissed. I was like, you're making $200,000 a year in pensions, and you're 58 years old, whatever it was. I said, that's not sustainable. And I tell you, it's going to tick me off if you build these pensions off the back of the working people and not off the administration. The administration's the one who need to get the pay cut. The people making $100,000 a year pension. You can't do it off the janitors. You can't do it off the bus drivers. You can't do it off the teachers. You got to do it off the administrators. You can't do it off the cops. You can't do it over the clerks. If they're getting an average pension of $30,000 a year, that's $2,500 a month. That's not what's breaking the bank. What's breaking the bank is these insanity with $100,000, $150,000 pensions that with cost of living adjustments. I mean, those people. If I were you, I'd be worried. I'd say, man, we can't afford this. Our benefits going to have to get cut for sure, because that's not sustainable. But if you got a $2,500 a month pension, I wouldn't worry about it. You're not going to get cut. I mean, it's like PBGC, the Pension Benefit Guaranty Corporation. If you're only making $2,500 a month, and PBGC's got to take over your company pension, not very high likely that you're going to lose an amount. All right, thought you'd find this interesting. Kind of long video, but that was interesting to me. We'll see you.